The following video is an origin story video of where a project came from and how it made over $1 million, and the probable original author for it, and also that people have been making something similar to this and borrowing from each other for a while. So we're going to bring up the first thing I'm going to put on the screen so I can get this out of the way. This is called a nibbler. It's a manually driven device that gives you reasonable levels of force. You usually hold it this way with the business end of it back on the arm here, and you use it to cut into metal. And the way that's done is that little bit on top moves up and down and has a sharp cutting edge that's hardened that lowers into the body of it. Now, if you were to turn it around this way and make it run off of a little rotating wheel, basically a cam, and then hook that up to a drill and tilt it this way, you could run it along the surface of metal pretty comfortably and have it grind into or chop away things as being a power nibbler. I've used one of those in the past. They used to have it to where you had to push it in forward and then drag it. Then they figured out put it at a right angle so we can actually use the damn thing. It's a reciprocator or like a sawzall with that bit will also exist and work. But the point is this allows you to cut metal freehand, just in one direction. You can kind of go in other directions if you get a different bit, but the one that goes in a straight line is the one that's most efficient in my opinion. Now, you can get a drill and a drill-driven sheet metal nibbler head that does the same thing put together. Mount it under a table as a table-mounted cutter for metal up to 14 gauge or 2 millimeter thick, and also for cardboard or anything else you want to cut, including extremely thin pieces of wood, although it would just basically chew it up. Now, that's what we're going to be talking about. That design, that idea has been around for a while in one form or another. Now we're going to go into our first example of it from 2023. Almost all of this is from the year 2023 forward. So here we go. August 10th, Ken Mayo 01 put up a project for free for people to get with all the instructions in the parts list for something he called the Bibbler Nibbler, a DIY kid-safe cardboard cutter. The idea is that since this piece reciprocates a very small distance, like it goes from here to here, you can make it to where this whole thing's covered to where it's really hard to get your finger in there. In fact, as I do this, if I put my finger in there, I can almost but not quite nip it. And it takes a bite that's maybe a millimeter deep. So the worst case scenario is you get a really nasty injury, but it would not in any way, shape, or form cause permanent damage to a person. It would be very difficult. Makes it very safe. And you can build this even safer, and that's what was done. But Ken Mayo, Bibbler Nibbler, was at instructables.com/DIY cardboard cutting machine, the Bibbler Nibbler. The project's still up, and you can find archives of it because I just made sure they exist, and I checked as far back as I could. First thing I'm going to bring up is a complaint. Instructables does not protect the provenance of your original or prior art in any project you put up by putting a time and date stamp on it, which is excruciatingly suspicious. Any website that lets you post anything that doesn't have it in the form of, and yes, this is the form, I will die on this hill, it's century, year, month, day, hour, minute, second. Every system in existence that lets you post something stores it that way. Century, 20, year, 23, month, 8, day, 10. Now, I know it's that day or earlier only because it was archived. There's an archive of it. The Instructables doesn't give you that. I guess they don't worry about lawyers, or maybe the lawyers told them not to do it to stay out of things. Let's move on. Now, we go forward about a month, nearly that, and we find a website being created on September 3rd, 2023, called chompsaw.com. Then on the 21st of that month, we have a YouTube video, ending in EC8, and it's the first YouTube post about this kind of a project, or it looks like it is. It's very similar. I should also point out other things. There was a Kickstarter created on the 28th called InvenTABLE, or InvenTABLE. Now, that name eventually, obviously, if you look it up right now, you'll find out that's actually associated with lots of projects people had before, and that would cause confusion, and it might also be a trademark or a service mark for somebody. So they changed it over later on to chompsaw, which wasn't used apparently. Anyway, it's earned $1 million by today's date for a Kickstarter project. And I'm totally sure that ChompShop, InvenTABLE, and the chompsaw are either A, directly a creation from Ken Mayo 01 for the Bibbler Nibbler, and or they got permission from this individual, and or there's no permission needed because it's not a proper invention because it's obvious to anyone conversant in the matter or art. But that would represent prior art, so I hope they don't actually cause a patent argument later on, or more importantly, don't flag my video for this. Let's move on. The YouTube channel was created earlier, and it was called InvenTABLE as a channel, and 2024, a long time later, January 24th. It's now called ChompShop. They renamed it now, at least twice or once. The YouTube channel did exist in 2023, February 27th, but we don't have the name for it because YouTube doesn't let you see the list of name changes. The URL, however, that's a long string of characters, ends in DYQ and is currently ChompShop. And again, that was started a while ago. And it was started before Ken Mayo's posting, but it doesn't have any videos from that period of time that would create provenance. So let's move forward to review. ChompShop, the thing was created, and they had the first video on it, and they did a Kickstarter. But all of this happened after someone else posted how to take a $17 piece of equipment you'd add to a drill and turn it into the device that's almost identical in functionality. They don't look exactly the same. However, when I did an image search for the chompsaw, this showed up on the Kickstarter, not on the Kickstarter, but the instructables. And other people have noticed, yeah, this looks exactly like something I saw on instructables. So anyway, you can buy one of these, the device, the main component that does all the work, for $17, and it goes from 1,500 to 3,000 RPM, and it can work up to 2 millimeter thick or 14 gauge metal of any kind about, and or as thick as cardboard. And it's a fairly common thing. The one I've used in the past and also pudged together was one that was built like a sawzall and had the nibbler going in and out like that, and go choppy, choppy, choppy. And in order to do it on sheet metal, we added an extra handle to it, or a jig, to where we could drag it along. And this would have been a massive improvement. And again, it's $17, and you hold it like this with a handle. Over here is the little whirligigger thing with a bar sticking out you put on your drill. And then below it is basically the equivalent to having this device positioned like this with a drill pointing in here. And it cuts in. And instead of this big tall thing, it has a really short one. And I'll leave a link to all this in the description. So here are my questions. Number one is Instructables avoiding being involved in lawsuits by making it really hard to prove you posted something on a particular day? Because it kind of fails in this case, but only. Next, did ChompShop, a.k.a. chompsaw, a.k.a. InvenTABLE, copy Ken Mayo's homework, or is he involved in the project? Because I can't see any reference to it. And why are they selling it for $250 when this is originally a DIY project people could build? And I've seen something like this, and I've built something like this poorly, not anywhere near as good, by using one of those, basically a sawzall with that kind of bit in it, mounted very poorly, but almost the same sort of arrangement. And yeah, I did a thing where I took a piece of wood and a piece of cord to press on the trigger and just pushed on that, and it was scary, but I did that. And it was just as safe. It's just, God, it was loud. So anyway, again, it's a sheet metal nibbler head that goes with your drill and the drill, both mounted under a chunk of wood, like 5/8 or whatever. And it can be used as a kid-safe cardboard cutter for DIY projects. And calling it a chompsaw from ChompShop and or the InvenTABLE is kind of cool. And Bibbler Nibbler is kind of a goofy name, and that's fun. And, inquiring minds want to know, what the hell is it with Instructables not putting up a time and date stamp? I didn't realize that until today. Oh my God, what a dumb thing to do. Somebody could put up an idea, and someone could steal their idea and make $1 million off of it. But I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm pretty sure he was involved in this. Pretty sure they talked to him. But this was on Shark Tank. And why is it all the Shark Tank videos don't tell you the time and date stamp when they were posted? I will find that one of the Shark Tank ones, figure out what year it came out, and I'll post that below and update the Shark Tank episode is blah blah blah, and I'll put it in the timeline. But nobody would have a question about this if, number one, Instructables put up the actual time and date stamp. I mean, it could be a much older project than what it looks like. Next, YouTube hiding the original channel names by obfuscation is almost as bad as on Wikipedia, where you can do what's called a page move and destroy all the history. And I should point out, one last little rant, more than one entity, I'm going to call it that, companies, countries, are trying to get rid of anybody who archives anything, like archive.org has been attacked, you might have heard of, but Archive Today is being attacked, because they make it impossible for you to say, I never said that, don't quote me wrong. That kind of crap when they're being quoted accurately. Sort of like finding all of Charlie Kirk's postings and saying, this is literally what the person said, here they are. History is something that is hated by people who lie about it. So I'm sure the InvenTABLE chompsaw chomp shop project that appears very much to have started after the Bibbler Nibbler, I'm sure that this project didn't just copy the person's homework. But I have questions. And again, the main purpose of this video has nothing to do with this. I'm sure this is perfectly acceptable, but making $1 million, just a little bit odd here. But my big problem is Instructables and many websites refuse to put a time and date stamp on anything. I don't care if it's ISO, simply because it makes it to where the search engines can be fooled into thinking it's a new post by re-aging it. Like YouTube, like on Google, searching, let's say, a Wikipedia article, and they move it, and it looks brand new, and it gets on the news by accident. Or like a website saying they have proof of paranormal behavior or UFOs by just reposting the same thing on their blog page, but just reposting it with a new time and date stamp. But I do think that it's dangerous at Instructables, where people put up their creative work, may not be able to prove they did something before someone else. And again, this provides provenance of a sort. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. You'll all need it.